Hey, how you doing? Wanted to get one over to you. Today is January 2nd. We're headed into the new year. Good to be with you. Thanks for being with me. This one's coming off of notes. I will be looking down a good bit. I plotted this one out a little bit ago, and I just wanted to get it over to you. So I wanted to talk about what to do with rage. And there's, for me, a little bit of a focus just on who tends to be the people that we notice with rage. And that would be most commonly in today's day and age. It's definitely black males. It's definitely straight black males, and their prevalence is like way higher than straight white males. They overperform in violent crimes, like 5 times over white people or something like this. It's been a long time since I've looked at the stats, but it's quite high. And some characteristics of these black males with rage. They'd be quick to violence. You know, there's a kind of warrior gene that these people have, makes them quick to violence. There's a lot of posturing, you know, a lot of like getting up, touch me, a lot of that. There's a lot of use a bitch, you know, use a soft bitch. I was just watching a video of that, I believe yesterday, some guy with dreads getting after somebody. And it's almost like an indiscriminate targeting. It's kind of like pit bulls. Like pit bulls will just like go at something, and it's almost like random. That tends to happen with black males. They'll be fighting with one person, then another person will say something that hurts their ego even more, and then they'll be totally focused on that person. There's a real streak of grudges held, and out of that, vendettas. So I do kind of want to contrast a little bit against whites here. You know, white men tend not to have vendettas, although there have been a few famous ones. That's generally not how white men handle it. I think with black men there is an inability to contain themselves, and I think a lot of that comes out of their childhoods, but you know, some of it probably doesn't. And this whole vendetta thing too, that the blacks will. They'll like shoot up somebody's house or something. They'll track somebody to their house and then shoot up their house. And there's a lot of through the media. There's been a lot of normalization of thug and gangsta culture through the media, and it's to foment as much of that as possible in order to raise up a race war. There's been kind of a what would we say, like a soft race war in America now for like 60, 70 years. And that's largely a media contrivance. It is also a welfare contrivance, and then the black men and some black women do willingly participate in that. And so it's just kind of important to note the differences in people when they are pressured by a lot of statism. So in the case of blacks, they just go with it. In the case of whites, there is a resistance there. In the case of Asians, there is a kind of resistance there. So it's just interesting to note how people respond to propaganda, generally and on the whole. So, and then I do want to mention straight white males. I'm going to get into the drivers of rage, but you can sort of note them by their tendency to pick fights with people publicly or online. There's a real antagonism that they can behave with. Some pretty nasty road rage and. Yeah, almost like there can be like a spoiling for a fight kind of thing. White guys get kind of high blood pressure, Although black men are famously very high blood pressure, and a lot of them die from heart attacks in their 40s. There's another thing, among black men and white men, where things can be extra loaded for them. This is how you notice a man with rage, is that he's just walking around with a chip on his shoulder, something in his history. He's very history oriented as well. With white men, it tends to be like historical grievances, things that didn't go well in the past. And then with black men, it tends to be what the media is in their head. And these are both forms of programming. With white men, it is it's a little more intellectual, we'll just say. So what to do with rage? Where does rage come from? I think that's an important question. It's the essential question if you want to know what to do with rage. And there's a number of different things. The biggest and the primary explainer is childhood, but I'm not going to get to that quite yet. I do want to go over just a hodgepodge list of other sources of rage. The first one that springs to mind really is legal dispossession, particularly in the case of whites. There are some large mass political movements building right now because there is a sense of injustice and a sense of hypocrisy when one looks at the elite, the ruling elite, and their sacred cows, and their sacred cows are, inviolable, and what they criticize tends to be things that have given white men power in the past, and there's a real nasty hypocrisy in that. So what else? Where else does rage come from? Being ordered around in school. This is a big one. These school systems obviously built on the Prussian schooling model, and a lot of guys want to play the tough guy because maybe they've had like military background, or they have military parents. And I don't, playing the tough guy, I mean being the tough guy. I think that there is a kind of callousness and a willingness to overlook that the regimentation in the school system really is toward compliance and obedience. And compliance and obedience is emasculating for young men. Young men are not being set free, and instead they are being sort of cowed by things that aren't an argument. Compliance and obedience aren't an argument. They're commandments, they're edicts, and they flow out of power. And and power corrupts. So another source of rage is a lack of male affirmation experienced in development. So for a father particularly, for a father to be, these fatherless blacks, and that's why they go on these looting sprees. Why don't the fatherless whites go on looting sprees? That's a thought from like 10 years ago. When all the new right guys, or whatever, the freedom right, the libertarian right, they were all like, it's these fatherless blacks. And I'm going, wait, hold on, but what about the fatherless whites? Why don't they exhibit the same mischief, we'll just say. Old thought popping into my head. Yeah, so a lack of male affirmation. I mean, a father needs to be encouraging, and of course he needs to be a role model, but he also needs to engage his sons directly in order to tell them what they've done well, what they could improve upon, and to sort of shape who they could be, to give them a sense of who they could be based on their aptitudes. That's really important, and that's relatively, we could call that affirmation. I think that's a good working definition of affirmation. And the problem is that because dads are so disengaged, they're like doom scrolling, or they're hedonists, they're just like on their phones. I mean, or maybe they're working a lot, although that's generally not so much the case anymore. If a young man, a teenage boy, a teenager, and then a young man goes without that affirmation, he will seek it. He will seek it laterally. He'll seek it from peers. And what happens with that is, things go like wolf boy mode, and then it's like Lord of the Flies. It's like Lord of the Flies without hierarchy, without a wise male that has stepped in. You get, we're talking about like packs of looters with black kids, and they're like in gangs. But a not completely dissimilar thing happens with white males. Only it has more of a panache, has more of a refined exterior. It's not like youth gangs, it's like other stuff. And people have a very hard time recognizing that. Also, this like horizontal orientation, this orientation to peers can lead to a kind of emotional homosexuality in young men, a kind of vanity and a kind of disengagement from productive imperatives in order to gain the affirmation of one's peers. But one's peers, they're like just as lost as you are, and they've not been raised philosophically. They don't really have a grasp of philosophy. And so in order to justify that emotional homosexuality, these peer groups tend to get rather aggressive intellectually. So, and that's like a byproduct of the internet too. It's like, don't get the essentials at home, go on the internet, try to get it from somebody there. And it leads to a lot of peer orientation. So What else? Where else does rage come from? The idealization of a compromised status father. That's a juicy one. Thus idealizing his addiction to violence. So, every man's got to make his scratch. And maybe I got to call this video Men with Rage, but every man's got to make his scratch. And the first person, your touch point for figuring out how to do that in this world, your main point of feedback growing up is your father. And generally we don't tend to class out, although there's a lot of classing down these days, some people would say prole drift. It remains the same, that our main mirroring that we're looking to get is from our father. And our father, like all of our fathers, were raised in more of a Prussian system. If you're, particularly if you're American, this video tends to be for Americans, Euros, Aussies, and Canadians. Those tend to be my guys. Germans as well. Your father was more raised in violence. He was more inculcated with the language of violence, and there can be a real temptation there in order to shore him up out of sense of pity or a sense of conformity, needing to conform and thus normalize his disposition. There's a tendency to idealize his rough edges. And this is, this is put into him by his father. It's also put into him by a system that was more coherent in terms of churning out factory workers and soldiers. So by idealizing his addiction to violence, it is in a way adapting his outlook to one extent or another. And there is a great reward in doing that. There's a lot of social acceptance in doing that, obviously. I mean, the easiest and sort of best way to make money as a not moral person is just to move to like Alexandria, Virginia, and just like work in the military industrial complex and make missiles to rain down on, innocents. But it runs the gamut. I mean, guys just identify with their fathers. And look, it's good to do that. I mean, but you have to separate his natural inclinations and his tendencies and like his true self, and then all that programming. And there can be so much programming that it's hard to find that real person. And generally, the younger your father was, the more of that you'll be exposed to. And that's why it's so important to be a father as young as possible. It's one of the reasons why. There's many reasons why. But if you had a younger father, there's a much higher chance that you saw him before the hardness of the world set in for him, and he made his compromises, and he became a corrupt individual, addicted to violence, chasing the money of the bankers, age as old as time. I mean, it happens to 98% of men. So, okay, next one is female henpecking. That's just worth mentioning. Women have a huge advantage right now over men because they can run to the state. The state is, a kind of feminist gynocracy, and there is something fundamentally emasculating about borrowing today against tomorrow. And people say, oh, well, but that means you have a competence that you'll earn later. But in function, like in actuality, that's not how it works. Usually people are just given over their hedonism. And it's certainly, at least it's emasculating. I don't know if it's effeminizing, but it is emasculating to like accept the devil's bargain. And that is mean the full tilt boogie in order to knock down the fertility rate. The full court press has been on females. And so females, they either run the state for welfare, and they're also raised in the school system, which is a kind of welfare for mothers. It's a kind of, the public school system is a way of taking the burden of parenting off of mothers and, to put more in white man's money out of his wallet into women's hands. And so women are in a nasty place right now, and it's like life is easier than it's ever been. It's like unnaturally easy for them. And so they develop quite the tude about that, and they could really impose some nastiness on the men around them, and they do tend to, and they have every incentive in the social environment, generally as it's comprised, to do that. So, and then another reason why men end up with rage is media propaganda not matching with reality. You can be sold lies, right? And you sold lies through the media and through the schools. Like one would be drugs are fun. And, so the whole, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this more in a second, but the whole theme of rage is powerlessness. And we're going to get into the childhood stuff. But this idea of drugs are fun, these subcultures that the media and the schools and these wicked professors and these wicked teachers and the teacher unions and such, what they espouse are these forms of hedonism that lead to burnout and ultimately lead to actual lived powerlessness. You're definitely powerlessness if you've burnt off a bunch of your brain cells. And so another one would be like fornication is cool, going and sleeping around, slamming and banging. Really all that does is mint more feminists. Any man with any number of body count, particularly those one-night stands, I think, really creates a lot more feminists in the world. And sometimes we look at these people and we think they're like anti-feminists or something because they have like edgy takes or something, but it's important to look past that. It's important to look at people's behavior and the effects of their behavior as opposed to their words and the effects of their words, because it's so like a thing to get us to look away from their power designs. So another lie that is sold through the media, through the schools, oftentimes can be that the military is noble, but at this point it just looks like a hit squad of sorts. I think I'll leave it at that. Another one is you'll get a job. That's a big ass lie sold in the media and in the schools. Go to college, you'll get a job. Like, how much powerlessness does that result in? And people are programmed with powerlessness. I want to get into the childhood. People are programmed with powerlessness, and so they tend to be buttered up, more prepared for messages received in adulthood that will lead to further powerlessness. And so the number one and most important thing you can do is start to think about your childhood, start to think about the self-knowledge angle. But I'm not going to get quite to that yet. I do want to just move forward a little bit more. You have three options. You have three options with dealing with rage. So the first is that you can sublimate. Well, I'll make the first that you express it indirectly. That's the first option, and that's where most everybody goes. And so that would be to have the behaviors that I listed earlier. So that would be like with the white males, just like picking fights with people, talking shit online, just doing like generally really unproductive things. And then rage can be turned inward also as well. I think that's a big one that I missed. Like doom scrolling is a way of re-experiencing the powerlessness of childhood, being captive with parents that don't give a shit about your preferences, don't really give a shit about you. Doom scrolling is a way of re-experiencing that. So yeah, that first option, I've talked about it some, what, like, oh, use a bitch, use a soft bitch, getting in other people's faces, trifling over things, road raging a lot, like just name calling and replies on Twitter. I've seen that here and there. I've experienced a lot of that. I've experienced a lot of false witness also. People bearing false witness against me, attacking my reputation. So people doing that, have a lot of rage because I have like good things to uphold, So to not have that puts a sense of powerlessness in people. So that, that's the first one, is you express it indirectly. The second one is you sublimate, which you could say is like, you could say is expressing indirectly, but people tend to associate sublimation with like positive things. So like a big one is like, hey, sublimate your sex drive. Don't have sex. Like don't be an onanist. Like don't do that sort of thing. And then you can get creative abilities out of that, and then you can express yourself. And I generally think like that's not bad. That's in the sense that it's not like as a moral statement, but saying that's somewhat efficient. Sublimation, but in pursuit of which goal? I think this is a really important part of this video that I wanted to get to. Like sublimation, but is it virtuous? And the answer generally is no. I don't know that it's all that easy to sublimate rage into virtue. I've not really ever seen it done successfully. I've seen people sublimate their rage into something they think is virtuous, and they end up spreading despair. They end up spreading misery, and you see this with artists like who come from the underbelly or whatever, and they're trying to be sincere, and really when you listen to it, it's just like a whole bunch of sad stuff that just kind of vortexes you into a more sad place. So I really question if rage can actually be sublimated or not all that well. Obviously, you can sublimate it into like a power pursuit. You can sublimate it into hedonism, which eventually always burns out into nihilism. When you're young and energetic, hedonism is fun. But then as you age and you're hard on your body, it turns into a nihilism. And yeah, the will to power. I mean, okay, so the best option for what to do with rage, we're here now, is it's the self-knowledge angle, which would be to process it and become free. And this might include, there's a number of things that this includes, but the very basic thing you can do with self-knowledge here, and the most essential thing you can do, and the most potent and effective thing you can do, is you can think of your earliest experiences of being powerless. And in doing that, like, you want to re-experience it, right? So, because people will do this and they'll be, oh, I have this memory. But it's like, you have to really feel what it was like back then and acknowledge your captivity. And we live in a captivity planet. We live in a prison planet, And so it can be all too easy to just have those feelings bubble up. And then you're not really conscious of them, so you're just acting them out. So the first thing is to go into the memories. Go back to the earliest memories of powerlessness. What was that like for me? Who were the perpetrators? Usually it's mom or dad. Usually it's dad. But often nowadays it's moms. I mean, moms have such attitudes now. It's more classical that it was dad before. Like, that would be for the boomers. Their dads were all like war veterans that helped genocide the Germans. So then the next thought after that, after like trying to feel that, getting the earliest memories, and you might have to stack those up. It might be a lot of memories. Is you want to think to yourself, how did I want to avenge myself then? And what a coinkydink. But then comes the thought, is this feeling similar to what I experience now? And there's the real rub. And if you can make that connection, that sense of wanting to avenge yourself then, wanting to get a comeuppance on your parents, wanting to get your retaliation against a cousin, an abusive cousin, a nasty teacher, if you can connect that to your day in and day out disposition today, you're going to come way out of rage. It's going to pop you way out of rage. And this is what I want. This is what I want for people. This is why I make these videos, is to help free people from these chains. And so in processing and becoming free, there are things that will occur to you that maybe you want to do. So a big one is, because you've acted out your rage before, a big one is including apologies to people that you have wronged. I think that can be so powerful. I had I had myself a time a couple years ago, a little bit more than a couple years ago now, because I had at a couple points called Stefan Molyneux evil. And that wasn't right. That was like wildly off base. But I was so in a logic, right? I was so in a logic that looked like the argument to me. It wasn't like, let me just slam him like with no good evidence. It was like, this evidence based on this ideology means this guy is pulling people out of the fight, and that's evil. And so I rethought that, and I went, no, I've wronged this guy. I've wronged this guy. And so I made an apology to him. And that was a big burden off my shoulders, because I didn't want to be out of sorts with him, particularly to that extent. That's not good. That's not good for him. It's not good for me. It's not good for anybody out there. I want to express positivity in his direction. So because he's done wonderful things, and this can cause you to re-experience your childhood, apologizing to people. And then, another one that you can do is, and I think it's all part of a process, because who do you have to apologize to? Maybe you have yourself to apologize to. Maybe you have a sibling to apologize to. Maybe a romantic partner at some point in time. But what this allows you to do is to shirk off the weight. So people take on this incredible weight when they have rage, which is that because they act this out in themselves, they excuse it in other men. And what you excuse, you become. And so there is almost like a cult of rage that is forming, and it sort of has wound itself up into the meaning of masculinity. And it's wound up in other things as well. And you can just take a guess at what I think those are. That's not the, maybe I'll leave that for the paywall. But there is a mutual excusing, and it looks like men coming to an accord. That's what it looks like. On the surface, it's very alluring, because it looks like men coming to an accord, men of differences coming to an accord. But what there is actually a mutual excusal of a predatory, rageful strategy. And I mentioned this yesterday on Telegram. I said that the logic at work in the world is one that is meant to excuse the maximal amount of violence possible. And so it really is only restrained by the argument. And the argument being philosophy, universals, stuff that I'm saying, stuff that Molyneux is saying, obviously. And you know, anybody can make a great argument. This is just where I tend to notice these things coming from. So there's been a huge character assassination campaign carried out by many, many people against me for pointing this out. That there is this kind of, I mean, it's not kind of, there is this mutual excusal going on. And all that does is make things worse and harder for people in the long run. And then you wonder how it's all funded, right? Who's going to pay for all this? Who's going to pay for it? Ask people their monetary policy. They won't tell you. So if you process and you free yourself, you do the journaling work, you do the self-reflection work, and you get over yourself, right? You get over yourself and you actually do it. However that may be. I mean, maybe you're lazy, maybe you're prideful, maybe you're arrogant, maybe you're haughty and acidic. Maybe you are self-avoidant, you know, but get over that, right? You get over that and you do the actual process and you let the memories come up, which is difficult sometimes to get memories. A lot of people have childhood amnesia. And it's not because it's actual amnesia, it's because it's a lot of stress. It was a lot of stress back then. And so we tend to stuff those things down, right? But if you do this, then you will get true clarity because you will have increased your empathy for yourself. And in turn, that standard universalizes and your empathy will increase for others. And this is a real freedom. I think it's the closest. I don't think we can have political freedom in our times. So this is about, in terms like freedom, in terms of like thinking you're going to maximize your agency or you're going to maximize your effectiveness in the world. I think this is about as good as it gets, is just ever increasing your empathy and thus raising your standards. And a lot of sobriety and a lot of peace tends to follow this option. And then you can actually have true creativity. I have true clarity, but I also wanted to put, you have real creativity. And it's creative, and I've had this creativity a lot, you know, and only because of health stuff it's gone down. But this creativity allows you to express a world more free of violence. And there's a lot of people that are not very invested in that. We'll just put it lightly, and they don't want that to happen. And so, but the great thing is you repel negative, unproductive people, and you compel positive, productive people toward yourself in doing this, because it is quite the endeavor, and it does involve your moral improvement. So that is moral improvement. I mean, that's one of the things I love doing on this channel. If you thought that was really valuable, head on down to the links down below. If you want to work with me, if you want to consult with me, if you want to improve your own moral quality, I'm around. So you send me a good email and I like it, then let's work together. You can also donate to me. That helps keep the wheels greased around here. And it shows that you're serious about the subject at hand. And so I'm always discouraging the free riding. If you made it this far, I think it was of value to you. And I think it's right by your conscience to put a little coin toward that. So I want to make more freedom, more peace, more creativity in the world. That's what I'm doing right now. That's what I'm going to be doing for the long haul. And I would love your support. So be sure you sub, smash that thumbs up. Until next time, I'll see you.